Discover the incredible transformation. How one lonely CEO turned a little girl's plea into an awakening of his soul. Ethan Carter watched the sun slip behind the sharp lines of the San Francisco skyline, painting the glass walls of his office in hues of orange and gold. He should have felt triumphant after all. As CEO of Ascend Tech, he was at the pinnacle of his career. Yet, an icy emptiness coiled within him like a serpent waiting to strike. The once adored laughter of his daughter now felt like a distant echo, drifting through the increasingly hollow expanse of his life. He was trapped in a gilded cage of success, with no way out. As he shuffled through the growing pile of correspondence, his fingers brushed against something different, an envelope, worn yet vibrant with youthful colors, its return address reading Mia Walker. Curious, Ethan opened it, revealing a letter in crayon-scribbled words that implored him to save her beloved art program, facing budget cuts that dangled like a guillotine over her classmates. The innocence and urgency in her plea twisted at his gut, their contrast stark against the sterile accolades that littered his workspace. Why should I care? He mused, his mind wrestling against the constricting notion that he was, in fact, choosing to ignore the plight of those beyond his financial bubble. The laughing face of Mia burst into his thoughts, her bright eyes sparking with ambition and hope during art class, surrounded by friends, painting under sunny skies. In a world driven by tech giants and numerical success, how could he, a powerful man, turn away from a child's dream? The creeping guilt consumed him. Seconds turned to minutes as he wrestled with the weight of responsibility against the seductive allure of corporate indifference. "It's not my battle," echoed his internal critic, but Mia's words pulsed in his veins. He felt an insatiable drive spurred by a growing awareness and acknowledgement of the disparities laid bare by a poignant child's request for help. The disparity he overlooked came crashing into focus with alarming clarity. Each projection he made for his company seemed trivial now. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Tension crackled in the air during the next board meeting as Ethan presented his newfound passion. Dismissive eyes rolled as an executive scoffed, "We don't need to waste resources on art programs. It doesn't affect our profits." The anger simmered inside him, clashing against the stark reminders of his carefully constructed empire. What did being the CEO really mean if he couldn't influence change, if he could not light a spark in others fueled by dreams? The relentless weight of expectation bore down as he plunged deeper into talks with the school, rousing parents, and preparing impassioned speeches. Each word bore the brunt of scrutiny, yet the fire ignited by Mia's plea became his compass. Should he fortify his position for the sake of the company or yield to the call of a young girl and fight against the tide? In that trembling moment, the boardroom faded, leaving only his echoing thoughts and a gnawing fear, wondering if he was ready to defy the very culture he epitomized. Standing on the precipice of a decision that could shatter his career and redefine his purpose, he hesitated. Would he choose ambition over compassion? Or could he face the ghosts of his own choices, staring into the endless horizon that awaited? The crossroads stood before him, the vast unknown sparking a tremor of possibility that both terrified and thrilled him. The choice loomed, waiting for his next move as the stakes rose with anticipation, a desperate race against indifference that could redefine not only his world but that of countless others. Ethan's pulse quickened as he returned to his desk, the boardroom's indifference still buzzing in his mind. The executives had struck a nerve, but their skepticism ignited a fierce determination within him, a desire to prove that profit and passion could coexist. He felt an unshakable responsibility to Mia, her innocence echoing in his heart. Her cause was a light illuminating the shadows of his complacency. As he settled into his chair, he opened his laptop and drafted a plan. No longer were spreadsheets and profit margins his main focus. Now, the mission was clearer. He sought to create a partnership with the school, proposing not only funding for the art program but also opportunities for his company to engage in community initiatives. The very technology that had propelled his success could flourish by promoting creative education. The next few days were a whirlwind. Ethan reached out to other local businesses, sharing Mia's letter, the artistic dreams of children, and the beauty of fostering creativity. An unexpected wave of support surged. Artists, educators, and community advocates rallied behind him. Each conversation was a revelation of shared values and dreams, reminding him that success wasn't merely about financial gain, it was about uplifting others. But the looming shadow of his board continued to weigh heavily on him. In private meetings, doubt lingered. Some questioned why he was investing resources, and others hinted he was jeopardizing the company's future. Facing these hardened perspectives was more challenging than he anticipated. He had to shift the narrative. How could he convince his board that investing in the arts was a sound business decision, one that could ultimately enhance the company image and drive employee engagement? Ethan sat, hands clasped, staring out of his office window. The skyline seemed different. He could see it now, not as a mere backdrop to his corporate empire but as a tapestry woven with dreams of those outside his bubble. For hours he pondered, finally rallying his thoughts into an eloquent presentation that would intertwine corporate responsibility with potential growth. The following board meeting he would face them again, but this time, armed with not just passion, but a strategic roadmap. As he practiced his pitch in front of the mirror, he noticed a flicker of uncertainty creeping in. What if his proposal was rejected again? Would he sacrifice respect within his industry? But quickly, he reprimanded himself. What was respect without purpose? What was profit if it erased humanity? He visualized Mia's hopeful expression, clinging to that image as his anchor. The day of the meeting arrived, and the atmosphere felt electric with tension. Executives filed into the room, their expressions unreadable. As he stood before them, he felt an unfamiliar sensation, vulnerability combined with fierce resolve. For the first time in a long time, he was not merely defending Ascenteca's financial growth, but advocating for a cause that transcended corporate boundaries. Imagine, he began, voice steady but impassioned, if we supported the creativity of children like Mia, igniting their potential, and in turn, inspiring our workforce. What if our company became synonymous with innovation not just in technology, but in nurturing future artists and thinkers? By investing in their dreams, we cultivate our own future. The silence that followed was deafening. Was it contemplation or disdain? Ethan, one board member, finally spoke. Her tone softened. These are ambitious ideas, but can they truly translate into results? He took a moment, weighing his response. They can. But only if we're willing to embrace a vision beyond our comfort zones. With every word, his own conviction grew stronger, and he realized this was not just a one-time effort, it was the beginning of a transformation that could redefine his legacy. The future was drifting ahead, cloaked in uncertainty but ripe with possibility. Would the board embrace the challenge? As he concluded, he felt the eyes of his colleagues inspective, waiting for a verdict that could sway the direction of his efforts. The moment hung heavy in the air, a collective breath held in anticipation, the outcome unclear as bright dreams battled against the hardened realities of business. Ethan felt the weight of every gaze fixed upon him in that boardroom, a tightness in his chest underscoring the culmination of his efforts. As he took a step back, the silence seemed to stretch into eternity, leaving a suffocating void that threatened to engulf him. His heart raced, amalgamating hope with trepidation. Moments later, he could almost predict the droning replies, the cautious, analytical skepticism he had encountered time and again. Surrounded by heavy thinkers who shifted between numbers and projections, he yearned for someone to see the vibrancy behind his vision. Could he be the one to break this cycle? He had felt a stirring spirit through Mia's letter, but was that enough to change hardened minds? Ethan, another board member, interjected, crossing her arms. We're still running a business. Is there any data to suggest that arts funding has a measurable impact on performance metrics? Can this really improve our bottom line? His gut tightened, but he wouldn't flinch. This was not merely a financial exercise, it was a moral compass guiding his choices. If we don't push beyond the numbers and into building a community, we risk losing our relevance, he proposed, warmth creeping into his tone. The workforce we nurture today will shape tomorrow's innovations. Creativity isn't a whimsical endeavor, it's a necessity for sustained growth. With a slight nod of approval from a couple of executives, his internal strategy clicked into place. Perhaps it was time to bring out the figures, the qualitative data about companies who invested in arts or social causes and flourished in unexpected ways. His resolve solidified as he quickly scanned the room for supportive expressions, seeking anyone willing to ally with his vision. After shifting the conversation toward potential partnerships and philanthropic angles, he sensed the tension begin to shift. There, he saw an acknowledgement from Luke, the company's chief financial officer, a man who rarely crossed the boundaries of conservative business talk. Luke's brow furrowed, contemplating, and Ethan decided to seize the opportunity. "What if we pilot a project?" Ethan proposed, leaning forward. "A small grant for the arts under an initiative where employees participate through mentorship programs? Let us measure the results, both financially and socially, over the course of a year. It can anchor our commitment and yield insights without overwhelming our resources. If we don't see a return, we can reevaluate our approach." He felt a current of energy ripple through the room. Was confrontation blending seamlessly with collaboration? Perhaps there was traction in this approach. "All right," Luke replied with a hint of surprise, "I see where you're going. A pilot program could help us gauge community impact while safeguarding our investments." Encouraged, Ethan realized he was no longer on the defense, he was forging a path. This was a point of connection, a chance to foster not just creativity among children but innovation within his firm. Survival wouldn't be measured solely in profits anymore, but in purpose and passion intertwined. The meeting continued, with Ethan deftly navigating the shifting waters, but as the discussions wound down, a nagging thought resurfaced. Was he merely selling an idea, or was he genuinely leading a movement? Would it be enough to transform him from a corporate leader into a catalyst for change? As the meeting adjourned and the executives filed out, uncertainty gnawed at him once more. Questions about the upcoming pilot lurked like shadows. Would his colleagues fully support the venture, commit substantial resources, and ultimately believe that art could rejuvenate their identity? Yet amid the fog of doubt, the faint spark of hope persisted. He had taken the first step toward redefining not only his company's narrative but his own. He was ready to emerge from the cold grip of financial calculations into a brighter sphere, populated with creative thinkers and budding artists. But this internal momentum was only the beginning. Outside the walls of the boardroom, he faced challenges he couldn't yet fathom. What critics awaited him amongst the community for his newfound commitment? The weight of his decision pressed heavily on him as he stepped into the bustling streets. Despite this initial victory, the true test loomed ahead. As he prepared to step back into his world, a message pinged on his phone, a new opportunity or challenge that could untangle everything he had just built. The stakes were rising. Who was the message from, and how would it change everything he was striving for? Ethan paused, gripping his phone as he glanced at the notification. It was from Mia. Just the thought of her ignited a blend of anxiety and excitement. What did she want to say now? A part of him had hoped for a message full of encouragement, but another equally loud part of him feared the weight of her expectations. Swallowing hard, he opened the message. "Ethan, I've been thinking about our last conversation. I know you're fighting for that grant, but let us talk. I might have an idea that could strengthen your proposal. Call me?" That tiny set of words felt like kindling to a spark. She didn't just believe in his vision, she was willing to contribute to it, a collaboration that could infuse his plans with authenticity. Yet, with this anticipation came trepidation. What idea could possibly enhance a project already under scrutiny from a skeptical board? He had barely found footing in the corporate arena, and now he faced the possibility of bending his newfound resolve based on someone else's input. Perfect, he muttered, contemplating whether this was an arena where he truly thrived. In the high-stakes swirl of business discussions, his choices had been weighted and scrutinized. Could a collaboration yield risky outcomes? A sharp inhale settled his mind as he chose to trust in the possibility she represented. After a few moments of gathering courage, he pressed dial. The phone rang, pulling him back through the haze of uncertainty into a sharp focus on the present. "Ethan." Mia's bright voice cut through the static, buoying his spirits. "I'm so glad you called. I've been working on a piece that could accompany your proposal, something you could present alongside the data. It would show not only the financial impacts but also the emotional ones. Like, let us make it personal. You want to show them the art? Ethan queried, considering her enthusiasm as it seeped into him like sunlight through thick clouds. Yes. But not just any art. I'm talking about involving the kids directly, their stories, their creativity. Imagine showing them a video montage of the beneficiaries of the funding you're proposing. Their words could carry weight in the meeting. Seeing these kids' talents could reshape the entire narrative. The suggestion felt electric, yet intimidating. Such a public display demanded vulnerability from both Ethan and the children whose futures hinged upon the proposal's acceptance. What if it failed? Images of the board shaking their heads in disapproval flooded his mind, but casting that shadow aside required strength he feared he might not possess. Do you really think it would resonate? He finally asked, battling with his inner doubts. Would they care about a few kids' stories? Ethan, it's not about them caring, it's about human connection, she said, her voice firm. You know how numbers and projections create distance. But talking about these kids, their dreams, their struggles, it's raw and real. It could spark something in the boardroom. They just need to see their humanity. Her words rang with a conviction he envied. The thought of merging their voices, insights, and backgrounds sparked a flicker of confidence within him. The risks, while daunting, felt curiously like opportunities for genuine growth. After hanging up, Ethan leant back in his chair, letting the conversation wash over him. The gravity of their collaboration sunk in. This wasn't a mere addendum to his presentation but a metamorphosis of the narrative he sought to tell. He chuckled softly to himself, wondering if others viewed this as idealism or folly. He was prepared to stand firm at that crossroads. His heart thudded with a newfound sense of purpose. Yet, a shadow still loomed. The upcoming board meeting was closer than he anticipated, and Mia's plan required a swift execution while navigating various logistics. What if the board didn't embrace the emotional angle? Doubts began to creep in again. Did he have the ability to pull this off? As he considered the weight of the proposal's truth, the stakes transformed before him. The strength of Mia's idea could become the cornerstone of his vision, or could it become the very thing that toppled him? Ethan inhaled deeply, ready to face whatever awaited him. He had stepped beyond a simple grant proposal. Now, he bore the weight of others' hopes in his hands. In the swirling whirlwind of self-doubt and inspiration, he knew one thing: the true challenge lay not in the pitch but in his willingness to weave their stories into a tapestry that might resonate with a cold corporate heart. The clock ticked ominously in the background as he dove into planning. All he could think was, would this gamble transform his life's mission, or would it unravel everything he'd just fought for? Ethan sat at his desk, the glow from the computer screen illuminating his restless thoughts. The weight of Mia's proposal loomed overhead like an impending storm, tempestuous and daunting. He had initially envisioned a straightforward pitch, but now it transformed into an intricate dance of narratives, numbers, and human connection. Each step forward felt like a bold leap into the unknown. Days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless revisions. The initial excitement began to wane, replaced by the growing apprehension of meshing his carefully constructed proposal with the vulnerability Mia suggested. He found himself questioning every aspect: the timeline, the visuals, the children's involvement, and most importantly, his own capability to execute such an ambitious plan. Sifting through potential stories to include, he spent hours listening to the voices of the children who would ultimately define the proposal. Their raw candor stirred something dormant within him, igniting a flicker of empathy that he hadn't realized he was missing. Their struggles, filled with both innocence and harsh reality, became reflections of his own trials. As he wrote their stories, he felt intertwined with their authenticity, a stark contrast to the corporate facade he often inhabited. During one late-night brainstorming session, he found himself torn between meticulously crafting the data-driven aspect of his presentation and crafting a heartfelt narrative. Each story he selected unveiled layers of himself he'd long buried. How could he balance the cold calculations of financial growth with the warmth of personal struggle? The two seemed at odds, yet he realized they must coalesce. This was not merely a transaction, it was about lives transformed. His break from the relentless editing came one evening when Mia texted, asking if they could meet to discuss their progress. Her genuine intention to connect rekindled his enthusiasm. As he prepared for their meeting, his stomach churned, not from anxiety, but from a burgeoning sense of purpose. The mission was no longer just about securing a grant, it was about elevating unseen voices into the corporate discourse. The cafe they chose was bustling with life, and Ethan felt a stark contrast in the air, the energy revitalizing and inspiring. As they sat across from each other, her excitement bubbled over, and he couldn't help but feel the gravitational pull of her passion. "This could redefine everything for you," she declared, her eyes sparkling. "The kids' stories will resonate. You just need to present it right." Ethan nodded, catching her infectious enthusiasm. "I know it sounds naive, but I'm beginning to believe we might really touch them, show them the heart of our project." "Yes. Exactly," Mia replied, leaning in as if their shared hope could weave them together. "But it requires crafting that emotional core even stronger. What if we incorporate interviews? Some live footage? It'll make it real." Ethan grappled with the implications. "But that means more logistics, more planning, and what if it falls flat? I can't risk the kids being disappointed. Or you'll miss out on an opportunity to make a statement that may help countless others," she countered, her voice unwavering. "You have to decide what's more important to you, the safety of the presentation or the very lives that depend on it." Her words struck a chord, resonating in him like a distant symphony finally coming into focus. He'd been so preoccupied with the fear of failure that he'd lost sight of the ultimate goal: empowerment and transformation. Back at his desk that night, Ethan began sketching a rough timeline for the rollout of their ideas, infusing realistic measures to ensure both his and the children's voices would be honored. He felt a dawning sense of clarity amidst it all. His role wasn't merely that of a presenter but of a curator of stories asking to be told. The anxiety that had plagued him now transmuted into a steely resolve. Yet, every time he tentatively glanced at the looming board meeting, unaware of the impending pressure that would envelope them, the terror surged back, thrumming beneath his skin like a persistent pulse. Would he have the courage to face the board with this vulnerable approach? Ethan gripped the sides of his desk, whispering a silent affirmation. The response to the board wasn't just about funding, it was paving a path toward acknowledging the humanity behind every figure, every statistic. In that revelation, he began to believe. As the days ticked down to the meeting, he stood at a precipice, daring to embrace an unknown future. What decision would reveal his true character, not just as an employee seeking funding, but as a man fighting for what truly mattered? The clock continued to tick ominously, and with every passing second, the weight of expectations grew heavier. Would he be ready to face the storm brewing beyond the boardroom doors, or would he falter when it mattered most? Ethan awoke with a sense of urgency, the day of the board meeting finally upon him. As he prepared himself, he couldn't shake the tension coiling in his stomach. Each step felt weighted, the pressure from the looming presentation seeping into his morning routine. Should he focus on the data, or emphasize the emotional narratives that had become the project's backbone? Dressing in a crisp suit, Ethan caught a glimpse of the man in the mirror. He looked competent, authoritative even, but beneath the surface, self-doubt gnawed at him. Was he truly capable of bridging the gap between sterile boardroom discussions and the poignant stories of children eager to be heard? The mirror betrayed no hint of the turmoil brewing inside. On his commute, Ethan ran through his notes, mentally rehearsing key points, attempting to compose the perfect blend of analytical rigor and heartfelt connection. Red lights became moments of self-reflection, each pause punctuating his growing anxiety. What if he faltered? What if his carefully constructed narrative fell apart under scrutiny? Arriving at the office, Ethan felt the charged atmosphere. Colleagues buzzed with their own concerns, but he cloaked himself in determination. As he entered the boardroom, the reality of the moment hit him. Familiar faces looked up from their screens, their expressions expectant. A wave of uncertainty washed over him. Could he command their attention? He set his materials on the polished table, hands trembling slightly. But as he stared at the third slide, which featured a child's hand clutching a faded photograph of her family, something changed. The terror that had clouded his mind started giving way to clarity. Understanding flashed through him. This was not just a presentation, it was a mission. These stories were not just statistics, they were lives, waiting for acknowledgement. The meeting began with the usual introductions and statistics about the company's growth. Then, Ethan took a deep breath, the moment thrusting him into the spotlight. He stood up, meeting their eyes with newfound resolve. Starting with the data, he quickly shifted to storytelling, weaving the children's tales of hardships and hope into his narrative. Imagine, he said, voice steady, the family of a child who has no resources. Their potential is stifled, their dreams overshadowed by circumstances. Now imagine if we could change that narrative through the power of our project. He began to share each child's story, their faces filling the room, evoking compassion and connection. He noticed some board members leaning forward, their stiff postures relaxing against the backdrop of his fervent presentation. The stories resonated, yet he knew he had to amplify the emotional core without losing the attentiveness of the data-driven. Balancing their interests became his new goal. Suddenly, a board member raised a hand, interrupting him. Ethan's heart raced. Ethan, can you justify the high costs associated with incorporating live footage and interviews? It seems risky. Ethan paused, processing the concerns. It was an invitation to defend his conviction. While it may seem like an additional expense, this investment is in our humanity and in changing lives. The authenticity we'll capture cannot be quantified in financial terms alone. We must show that our work extends beyond profit. It's about creating long-lasting change. His words hung in the air, the tension palpable. It felt like a challenge, yet for the first time, Ethan owned his professional stance. Here stood the culmination of every internal struggle, every sleepless night spent contemplating his approach. He would not shrink back. Then, as questions continued to rise, Ethan found himself deep in the intricacies of his projected timeline. Each criticism served only to bolster his confidence in the direction he had chosen. He leaned into the realities of their proposal, unearthing the layers of potential buried within the children's stories. As he concluded, an unexpected silence enveloped the room. Had he done enough? Ethan's pulse quickened. The uncertainty lingering. Would they grasp the vision he had painted? Would they embrace the risk necessary to elevate human narratives beyond numbers on a page? Then, he spotted Mia through the glass door, her warm smile a beacon of support. She had jumped in last minute, standing behind the camera to help capture all the emotions. Hadn't they set out to make a difference together? The clock ticked on as Ethan stood poised. The moment of truth arrived. The board's expressions were inscrutable, and the next words spoken would shape not just the outcome of his project, but perhaps redefine his own professional identity. With the weight of expectations heavier than ever, one question lingered. Would the management seize this as a bold opportunity to change lives, or would they retreat into familiar comforts and safety? The silence in the boardroom stretched into an uncomfortable eternity, punctuated only by the even ticking of the clock on the wall. Ethan's heart thumped loudly in his chest, underscoring the weight of his anticipation. He held his breath, feeling the tension clawing at his resolve. Each face before him, each board member, obscured their thoughts behind professional facades. Were they contemplating the stories he had woven, or were they simply calculating the risks? Suddenly, the chair at the head of the table broke the stillness. Ethan, I appreciate the emotional weight behind your presentation, Ms. Platt said. Her tone was measured, revealing nothing. But we must consider if this approach merits the costs involved. A familiar panic gripped Ethan once more, an invasive worry that wormed into his thoughts. Was he losing them? He forced himself to focus, recalling the children's faces, their unvoiced pleas for opportunity. He took a breath, grounding himself in their narratives, in the urgency of their aspirations. But what if we flip this on its head, he interjected, striving to reclaim the narrative. What if we consider these costs as not merely expenditures, but as the clearest illustration of our values? By investing in visual storytelling, we humanize our efforts, creating an emotional bridge to stakeholders and potential supporters. Isn't that worth more than simply saving a few dollars now? A flicker of interest ignited in the eyes of a few board members. Their skepticism began to soften, revealing hints of curiosity beneath the surface. Could Ethan really be onto something? He pressed forward, interspersing facts with inspiration. Let us not forget the success stories, he continued, projecting slides of testimonials and videos depicting the transformation born from their initiative in previous projects. These are not just fleeting moments, they showcase tangible change. What we're proposing is not frivolous but essential, the means to foster genuine connections, a necessity in today's complex landscape. His pitch clarified, Ethan shifted from excitement to analysis, presenting data on viewer engagement and fundraising potential linked explicitly to communications strategies that employed authentic storytelling. His professional acumen began to meld with his newfound passion. He felt the balance of heart and mind tip in his favor. As he closely monitored their reactions, he occasionally caught Mia's reflective gaze through the doorway. An unexpected warmth surged within him, reminding him he wasn't alone in this endeavor. Their shared ambition to create change offered an anchor in the storm of self-doubt. The thought propelled him, igniting a resolve deep within. A couple of board members began whispering to one another, nodding slightly. Ethan seized the moment. Our organization can redefine its legacy through this endeavor. It's not about funding, it's about positioning ourselves as leaders in innovation, using our resources and expertise for good. With each word, Ethan reclaimed more ground. He could see the tension dissipating, conversation sparking among the board members, dissecting the pros and cons. Each gesture brought him closer to a pivotal decision. But as the minutes melted away into fervent discussion, a familiar face returned to the forefront of Ethan's mind, Michael, the CFO. His normally rigid demeanor contrasted sharply against the enthusiasm that had enveloped the room. Michael was known for his staunch adherence to finances, his cool analytical prowess. If he remained unconvinced, the project could still falter. With that realization, a fresh wave of anxiety engulfed Ethan. Would the supportive murmurs ultimately be suppressed by Michael's caution? As he glanced nervously at Michael, a confrontation loomed on the horizon. Their contrasting philosophies could lead to an inevitable clash. Ethan felt a rift forming between his heartfelt ambition and Michael's relentless pragmatism. Would he find a way to counter Michael's argument, or would this setback jeopardize everything he had fought to achieve? The clock ticked down. Ethan steeled himself, the unyielding urgency of the moment crystallizing. The time had come to face the very real challenge that threatened to undermine all the hard work and passion he had woven into his presentation. Ethan's gaze sharpened as he met Michael's inscrutable expression. The hum of the boardroom faded, and all that existed was the resolute figure of the CFO. He was a wall, solid and imposing, a bastion of caution against Ethan's fervor. The clock on the wall continued its steady beat, marking time as if it were a living entity counting down to an inevitable confrontation. We can't ignore the numbers, Michael's voice finally cut through the buzz. We must examine every investment against potential risk. Emotion doesn't subsidize cash flow. His tone was cool and clinical, echoing the sentiment of financial prudence but masking an underlying challenge. Ethan's throat tightened, but he forced the panic away. This was a defining moment, one that could either catalyze change or lay waste to his hard work. He had to craft a response that leveraged both his emotional appeal and the business acumen required to speak Michael's language. Michael, I understand the need for metrics, Ethan replied, carefully measuring each word. But consider this, our greatest assets are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are the stories and lives we touch. Those narratives resonate with people. By investing in these stories, we cultivate a community of supporters who will fund us in the long run. Isn't it worth the leap? Michael leaned back slightly, a flicker of acknowledgement crossing his face. Ethan held his breath, waiting to see if that brief glimmer would evolve into understanding or remain merely a momentary flicker. What you're asking for is a gamble, Michael responded, tapping a pen against the table. You can't calculate emotional impact. What happens if we don't see the support you anticipate? Ethan's heart raced. This was the crux, a test of belief and conviction. He couldn't allow fear to cloud his vision. Could he frame this gamble as a strategic advantage? He took a steadying breath before answering. What happens, Michael, is that we start building a narrative that speaks to the heart of our mission. If we don't try now, we may never know the depth of our impact. Saving a few dollars today should not come at the cost of our vision for the future. The tension in the room escalated, shifting as board members turned their attention to the back and forth. They were drawn into the clash of philosophies, weighing Ethan's passion against Michael's cautious strategy. "Passion is great, Ethan," Michael said, almost dismissively. "But show me the forecasts. Show this board how your vision translates into dollars." Ethan felt a knot forming in his stomach. Perhaps he had miscalculated the reality of their treasury, the cold hard truth lurking behind his idealism. His assessments fell short of sufficing Michael's demands. But as his mind raced through his data points, an epiphany struck. He realized there was an avenue he hadn't yet explored: the financial implications of success from increased fundraising through powerful stories. "I can provide detailed projections," he said, his voice firm, "but let us first illustrate the potential before and after through those success stories I mentioned. The financial benefits of enhancing our brand image could far exceed the investment." Michael's eyes narrowed. "So you're suggesting a strategic pivot in how we analyze our financial future?" Ethan nodded earnestly. The words felt like a portal opening, leading him from danger to possibility. "Yes. If we focus not just on costs but on the long-term impact of investing in our narrative, we can identify new revenue streams that could envelop our current strategies. We can create brand loyalty that finalizes support beyond donations. This is about cultivating rich relationships and trust." For the first time, something shifted in Michael's demeanor. A hint of intrigue began to replace his skepticism, the lines between caution and curiosity blurred. As board members huddled together, allowing murmurs of discussion to swirl, Ethan felt a sense of apprehension mixed with budding hope. Perhaps he hadn't lost them entirely. Would this newfound angle be enough to coax Michael into his camp? The conversation ebbed and flowed but eventually echoed back to him. "What do we need for the analysis?" one board member inquired, probing for the specifics. "Let us come together to reimagine our value proposition." Ethan's voice thrummed with urgency. "If we can agree on a pilot project, the results will speak for themselves. We will need buy-in and a clear understanding of what we're willing to risk for a chance to gain something better." The clock ticked dangerously close to the meeting's end, and Ethan was now standing on a precipice. Could this proposal lead to real change, or would it crumble before it took flight? Would Michael's resistance harden into an immovable opposition, or would they forge a path together? As board members turned to one another, the air thickened with possibility and tension. Ethan took one last glance at Michael, sensing that the battle was far from over. He could feel the winds shifting, carrying the weight of his ambitions into unknown territory. "Let us meet tomorrow," Michael finally said, his expression unreadable. "But remember, I will need hard data to support any decision we make." Ethan nodded, heart racing. The stakes had elevated dramatically, and as he left the boardroom, questions buzzed through his mind. Would he find the data needed to sway the CFO? What if the numbers didn't align with his vision? The moment had shifted, and now all he could do was prepare for the next encounter, a showdown not just of minds, but of ideals in pursuit of what they believed the organization could truly become. Ethan stepped out of the boardroom, the air heavy with unresolved tension. The fluorescent lights offered a stark contrast to the whirlpool of thoughts swirling in his mind. He replayed the exchange with Michael, searching for clues hidden within the CFO's unyielding facade. There was a fragile opening, a potential pathway that ignited a flicker of hope, yet its juxtaposition with Michael's unrelenting focus on the cold, hard facts kept the fire flickering dangerously close to extinguishment. As he navigated the bustling office corridors, Ethan's mind sharpened into focus. He needed to transform his emotional argument into a concrete strategy that would adequately address every one of Michael's concerns. It wasn't just about appealing to the heart anymore. The logic had to echo through every decision they made. The juxtaposition between passion and pragmatism would define not just the trajectory of his proposal but his own professional evolution. That evening in his modest apartment, he surrounded himself with spreadsheets and projections, the raw data intermingling with charts he'd painstakingly compiled. The silence of the room enveloped him like a cocoon, yet the solitude only heightened his sense of urgency. He knew he could no longer be just the passionate innovator. He had to become a strategist, an architect of precise plans that could withstand scrutiny. With each passing hour, Ethan layered his insight with figures, crafting a narrative that told a compelling story not through emotion alone, but through figures that spoke of growth, potential, and influence. He envisioned a scenario where his approach would not just create impact but also add tangible value. The clock on the wall ticked inexorably forward. Time slipped away as he continued refining his projections, finding angles he had missed before, exploring correlations he hadn't analyzed. He realized that by aligning his emotional appeal with the data in ways that resonated with the board's priorities, he could illuminate paths forward that appealed to both their hearts and minds. With each notch of progress, however, doubt began to creep in. Could he truly meet Michael's expectations? The stakes were insurmountably high. He could hear Michael's words echoing in his mind, "I will need hard data." In a world defined by numbers, could he truly bridge the gap between storytelling and fiscal responsibility? As dawn approached, everything clicked into place. He would not merely present the data, he would tell a story woven with evidence, create a compelling case from both qualitative and quantitative perspectives. It would not be a gamble, but a carefully laid blueprint for potential success, outlining every risk with calculated foresight. He would detail the financial impact of investing in their narrative. The morning sun cresting in through his window felt like a sign, urging him onward. Ethan had prepared something more than just numbers. He had crafted a vision, a shared future where emotion married logic, igniting passion that propelled innovation. As he gathered his materials for the day, he could sense a shift within himself. The fear had transformed into fierce determination. Conviction surged through his veins. He wouldn't just be a lone voice, but a leader who could unify perspectives through actionable strategies, a person who could emerge from conflict not just as an advocate but as a decisive catalyst for change. Prepared and resolute, Ethan arrived at the office, ready to stand before the board once more. He smiled faintly, steeling himself for what lay ahead. This was not simply about convincing Michael, it was about redefining his own identity within the organization. Yet, his heart pounded in anticipation of the potential backlash. The board's instincts might circle back to skepticism. Could his proposal falter? This was merely the precursor to the moment when ideals collided with corporate realities, and the real test loomed close. Ethan tightened his grip on the folder housing his proposals, intuition buzzing as he remembered Michael's watchful gaze. Today was not just about a meeting, it was about affirmation, his capacity to forge a narrative that reconciled emotion with numbers, beckoning not just the board's support but ultimately forging his own path as a leader, capable of orchestrating real change. But as he approached the conference room, doubt flickered in the back of his mind. Was he truly ready to confront not just Michael, but his own fears of failure? The door loomed before him, the threshold to yet another pivotal moment in his journey. He pushed it open, and the weight of his aspirations and anxieties hit him like a tidal wave. Would today be the day he conquered the unknown, or would it unveil more profound revelations about his own limitations? Ethereal possibilities swept through him as he stepped inside, where the room was charged with the anticipation of what could unfold. Ethan stood at the threshold of the boardroom, an array of determined faces staring back at him. Today was not just an opportunity, it was a reckoning, a moment to prove that he could synthesize ambition with authenticity. As he readied himself for the final round, he felt the pulsing energy of his journey guide him forward, from a hollow CEO to a transformative leader. "Thank you for gathering once more," he began, voice filled with newfound confidence. "Today, I'm not just here to present numbers, I'm here to share a vision, a commitment to redefine our legacy through the lives we touch." He navigated through data meticulously, but unlike before, each figure was adorned with the rich narratives of children like Mia, whose futures depended on their decisions. He articulated the potential impacts of investing in art programs, coupling quantitative projections with compelling storytelling. Imagine a world where Ascend Tech not only thrives financially but also shapes the futures of countless young creators. The pilot program I propose is not merely about funds, it's about cultivating community trust, igniting engagement, and establishing our brand as synonymous with opportunity. He leaned into each point with clarity, conviction illuminating his features. As he spoke, he felt the atmosphere shift. Once skeptical expressions softened, even Michael leaned in slightly, his hardened demeanor beginning to crack. The pulse of doubt that had haunted Ethan throughout his preparation transformed into a connection that resonated across the room. By the time he reached the conclusions, Ethan had laid the groundwork for a pilot project underscored by a dual emphasis on community engagement and measurable growth. He outlined clear metrics for success, merging the emotional with the empirical to provide them with a comprehensive framework for evaluation. Every resource we allocate should reflect not only our financial prudence but our commitment to societal progress. By investing in the creative potential of our youth, we cultivate champions who may very well innovate the future of technology itself. He paused, scanning the room, absorbing every nod, every deliberative look. Then Michael broke the silence, a thoughtful expression adorning his face. "Ethan, I'm impressed with the synthesis of the proposal. To navigate from mere sentiment to tangible metrics is no small feat. Your vision has found its center." That moment, that affirmation, surged through Ethan like electricity, shattering the last barriers of doubt. As he opened the floor for discussion, he realized that his transformation was not solely about selling an idea, it was validating his capacity as a leader who could shepherd change. Discussions sparked contingent to his proposal, the board members eagerly voicing their insights, and to Ethan's surprise, they shifted from skepticism to enthusiasm. The analytical minds of the executives began embracing the emotional narratives, intertwining them with numerical validation. "Let us draft a budget outline," someone suggested, their excitement bubbling to the surface, illustrating a willingness to support a project that had once seemed a risky gamble. Over the course of deliberation, Ethan witnessed the tide turn decisively. The board transformed from a wall of resistance to a coalition prepared to champion his initiative, rightly recognizing that their investment in the arts was also an investment in their company's future. He felt the warmth of solid confidence filling his chest as they explored potential timelines, community partnerships, and opportunities for employee involvement. As the board finalized their agreement to initiate the pilot program, an exhilarating mix of relief and pride washed over Ethan. He had done more than present a proposal, he had reshaped the culture of his firm, aligning their corporate ambition with a greater purpose, a legacy defined by the lives they could improve rather than just the profits they could amass. Later, as he exited the boardroom, Ethan carried a newfound sense of self, buoyed by recognition. That felt both profound and transformative. He had conquered not only the professional barriers set before him but the limitations within himself. In pursuing a child's plea, he had catalyzed a change that rippled through the very fabric of the company, a vital commitment not only to profit but to progress. In the weeks that followed, Ethan witnessed the blossoming of ideas, the eagerness of employee volunteers ready to engage in the art program, and the budding excitement in the community that had previously felt distant from corporate corridors. He no longer felt confined within the constraints of his own gilded cage. Instead, he relished the burgeoning connection his company was forging with those around them. And it all began with a single letter from a little girl, a beacon illuminating the pathway to fulfillment, purpose, and a legacy intentionally crafted. Ethan learned that true leadership stemmed from vulnerability and courage. He had proven that the essence of success lies not solely in balance sheets but in the profound impact they could create. Ready to embrace whatever came next, Ethan embarked on a journey that was just beginning, committed to nurturing creativity and change, knowing that he could change not only his trajectory but that of countless others. This is your moment to embrace the transformative power within your own life. You need to subscribe now to not miss out on more inspiring stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this uplifting conclusion. Join us on this journey of overcoming, and let us redefine success together. Share your thoughts and theories on the ending below. Your support makes all the difference.